What's up? This is John with the Dr. John Delony Show. I hope you're doing awesome. And I've tried to not say the word awesome anymore. I had a buddy tell me that's what people who work with high school kids say, oh, that's awesome. And I'm trying not to say it, but I just said it, and I'm sorry, but I'm so glad you're with us. Listen, the special show. It's the 100th episode show. We've done 100 of these things. We've gone from Delony does not have social media and does not know how Instagram works, which, according to some of you who write into me, still don't know how that works, to we have crossed the 100 show mark. We are off to the races, and I can't even tell you. This is so surreal. It's been a mind bender. I'm so grateful for everybody who listens to this show, who tells their friends, hey, you got to listen to this episode. You got to go check this guy out. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. So here's the deal. In my nerd world, when I was a researcher nerd and an academic guy, what I was really fascinated by was quote unquote people that had made it, right? Doctors, lawyers, people who were winning in business, faith leaders, folks in communities that other people look to them for answers. How do I be well? What do I need to be doing now? And what I was always fascinated by was the more successful people became, the lonelier they got, the tighter their circles became. And suddenly they start seeing the world a little bit differently. They start acting a little bit differently. Their world starts orbiting other things that most of us don't understand. And here's the thing. When you get behind the fake lives and the plastic lives and the curtains, I found out they were people just like me. And it gave me a lot of peace. And it changed the way I blamed people for stuff and pointed fingers at people for stuff. And so here's the thing. This is 100th episode. Is that how you say that, James? 100th? It's the 100th episode. It's the 100th episode. And I thought, man, my love for sitting down with somebody and having a deep conversation that people have never heard before, getting to the question and the story, behind the question and behind the story, and my love for digging into folks who have quote unquote made it. I'm so excited. Dave Ramsey himself joins me on today's show, talks about some things I don't think he's ever talked about publicly, talks about how things fell apart, scorched earth, and he had to rebuild from the floor up. And some of the things he did intentionally, some of the things he still worries about, struggles about, some of the things that he still does in his life every day to make sure he's whole and he's well, and what grief looks like, what loneliness looks like, all of it. We go there, and I'm so excited. I'm so grateful that you joined me on the show, and I'm really excited to let you guys see what I get to see on a daily basis, which is the guy behind the microphone, right? When the microphone's turned off. And I'm just so thrilled. So stay tuned. It's a wild ride. By the way, he said one of his favorite songs was the Eagles, and so we don't have a favorite song on this one. And so just sing your favorite Eagles song and just assume that was the song of the day. Cool. Stay in school. Don't do drugs. This is Dave Ramsey on the 100th episode of the Dr. John Delony Show. It's good to see you, man. Dude,
you too, John.
I am the worst. I watch some of my colleagues. Y'all are so good at getting into shows and out of shows, and there's 2 minutes left and nobody knows. There's this whole piano playing that's going on that the average listener has no idea. And there is no more awkward person in this building than me at getting into a show, getting out of it. It's like, hey, well, it's over. See you later.
We could probably get him some bump music, James. What do you think?
No, we don't. No, we're good.
Bump.
I don't
Gotta have some bass, though.
Saxophone. It's all about that bass. I just can't. Anyway, so it's good to see you, man.
You too.
So in obviously this show is very similar to your show, but very, very different too, where we get a lot of calls about questions, but the goal here is to get behind that question and to talk to the people that these questions are happening to, right? And often people think this is the thing that's going on in my life. It's not, right? There's other things going on. And if I get deeper than that, one of the things that I've noticed over the last 15, 20 years is people operate every day with these words that are running through their heads all day. But they don't have a picture for what that reality looks like. And they think that everyone in their world around them has got it more together. Everything's going great. Everything's looking wonderful. And if someone's got a radio shows on TV or they have an exercise program, whatever it is, they don't experience all these other things that are really just normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill experiences that we all as people are experiencing all the time, right? And so I love this segment. We've had some few interviews on the show, but I love having these conversations where we can take somebody who's got a persona, got a public face, if you will. You have less of a persona. You're kind of who you are. But then say, tell me about, elaborate this for the listener, right? Give somebody a ringside seat as to what this experience was like. And so I appreciate you coming on the show. Just for the average person, obviously if someone's listening to this show, they know who you are. Give us the story, right? The story that is the arc of that began the Ramsey, the get out of debt, the baby steps, that I want to be a part of helping other people. Take us back to that original story.
Sharon and I graduated from college. We were broke. She was driving a Pinto. That's how broke we were. This is a bad car, John. And I got fired from a job. Still don't know why I got fired. The guy just came in, cussed at me, and threw me out there. I probably did something that I deserved, but I wish he'd just told me. He's dead now, and I'll never know why I got fired.
You'll never know.
I'm bitter. But I got fired, and I came home, and I always been around the real estate business. Mom and Dad were in the business. I got my license when I turned 18, so I thought, I'm going to the real estate business. And so I went to work for a builder for a while, and then I decided to start buying and selling real estate, and the Nothing Down real estate seminars, and this is actually before there were actual infomercials to tell you how to do it, but I went to these Nothing Down seminars, which were hokey, but what it did do is it made me believe I could do it. And so I bought our first investment property at 23 years old. By the time I was 26, I had $4 million worth.
You have kids?
No, the kids came later.
Okay.
And and so we,
So you're a 26-year-old millionaire.
Yeah. And I
no more Pintos,
but I had
right?
borrowed, but it was all borrowed money. I mean, I had borrowed $3 million to get the $4 million worth. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So I'm a millionaire. Right. But it's all in real estate. So I got no cash at all. I mean, I had spare cash flying around. I was making a couple of $100 a year, which in 1983 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I worked all the time, and I was an arrogant little person. And
you can say it on this show, man.
And yeah, I own the show, so I probably shouldn't. But anyway, yeah. And so I'm driving a Jaguar. I thought I was all kind of BA, right? I thought I was something else, and all worried about how everything looked. I met God on the way up.
When you say that, what does that mean?
I mean, I started going to a church, and I fell in love with Jesus, and I got baptized, and I started learning the Bible, which I knew nothing about. And it started changing me. And along that story arc, of course, the banks got sold to another bank, and they called our notes. We had a lot of short-term notes because we were doing flips. So we have a 90-day note, and if the house didn't sell, we just renew it for 90 more days till it sold. But all of a sudden, they said after 90 days, we want all our money. And so, I mean, the whole thing, this house of cards came crashing down. And we almost made it. I paid the $3 million down to under $300,000.
Whoa.
And I almost made it, but it took 2.5 years. And 1 year I made $250,000. The next year I made $6,000. My taxable income was, and that's the year Rachel was born. And that's the year we filed bankruptcy, was the last year, because we couldn't make the turn. We had too many lawsuits and too many people coming after us, and they're coming to take the baby bed out of the house, and it just destroyed any sense of ego or confidence, or the word you would use is trauma. Traumatized me. But in the midst of it, I see we always use the phrase around here, but it's very true, is met God on the way up, got to know him on the way down, and our marriage is hanging on by a thread. Sharon would have left, but she didn't have a car. I mean, Rachel's born. We got a toddler, Denise, and
Rachel's middle, right?
Yeah, Rachel.
So you had two.
Yeah, Rachel was born in April. We filed bankruptcy in September, and September was the end of the 2.5-year fight.
And how much older is Denise than Rachel?
3 years.
So one of the most common calls we get on this show is, hey, my marriage is a mess. And when I back out and say, all right, give me some details, they say, well, we got 2 kids under 3. And I always stop and say, your life's a mess anyway, right? Yeah. Just hang on, because it's going to... Yeah. But
Sharon had that. Sharon was a single mom with 2 babies.
Okay, because you're running around.
Because I'm just running around working 60 hours a week selling stuff, trying to keep from going bankrupt, and trying to eat and trying to keep the lights on, and they weren't kept on, they got cut off, and then keep the water on, and it wasn't cut off, and I mean, we were so broke. Of course, I'm handy because I was always working on houses my whole life, and so when they cut the water off, I had a water meter tool. I just went and cut it back on.
Right.
And then they came out and cut it off, put a lock on it, and then I took my bolt cutters, cut the lock off, and cut it back on. And then they came out and took the water meter out.
Oh man!
So they don't like you taking water if you're not paying if you're not paying the bill. So eventually, I had to pay the bill, and I'm trying to feed my family. I mean, I was broke. And it was not anything I'm proud of, but I really did do that. And if I could have figured out how to do that with the electric meter, I would have done that too, but I couldn't figure it out without getting electrocuted and dying. So, I mean, we had the lights cut off. We had everything. We had stuff towed. We were foreclosed on. We were sued. And it was just 2.5 years of unmitigated hell. And when we went bankrupt, I'll never forget, I'd been so scared for so long, and I didn't know I was scared, and I was so broken, and I would just stand in the shower and cry. And I remember driving away. I can show you the stoplight on Charlotte Pike where I was here in Nashville. I was driving away from this little attorney's office, and we just signed the paperwork. And when you file bankruptcy, it puts a stop on all collector activity, all creditor activity. They can no longer contact you. Mm-hmm. And I've been battling these guys with clubs and knives and bazookas for 2.5 years, day in and day out. Been lied to, stepped on, kicked, spit on, and deserved most of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting at that stoplight. I'm 28 years old with a brand new baby. I don't have any way to make money. I'm out of business. Mm-hmm. I had an incredible peace wash over me. Mm-hmm. It's like the other side of the trauma. Mm-hmm. This thing just washed over me. And I thought, man, I can breathe. I'm going to be okay. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to be okay. I don't know where we're going to get food next week, but we're going to be okay. I don't have this monkey on my back anymore.
Yeah, that's one of the most common things I hear when people are going through something, and you realize I haven't exhaled for 2 years.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't looked my kid in the eye in 2 years, right?
I mean, my countenance changed literally in 6 months. I mean, it was a spiritual peace, yes. But there's just getting that crap off of us. And so when somebody calls my show 30 years later now, and I can hear it, I can hear it, just like you can hear it on this show. Well, I watch you. You've done enough trauma work. I mean, you can hear somebody. You're hearing between the lines when they're faking it, the nervous laugh or whatever. And I can tell when they're getting ready to start crying. Because I can feel it. I know that. I know what it feels like to have that lump in your throat.
Right. Well, and that's the difference between reading a book about something and having sat in that seat and stared at that stoplight. Yeah. Right. And taking that, oh man, I haven't exhaled in 2 years, right, or 3 years. And when I hear a Phoenix from the Ashes story, like I'll hear this, and now we look at this building, right? You got 1,000 employees. We just built the other building for the other two. Like you've been a part of this. Not been a part of, you orchestrated this extraordinary journey since then. When I look at a story like this, or I look at the super weight loss story, or I look at the fill in the blank story, what I always think is, man, that must have been tough. Then look how great. So I got a model and I got a map now from here to here. And then I go like weight loss or exercise. Then I go the next morning and I just work out as hard as I can. I go do it. And then that next morning, I'm so sore I can't move. Yeah. And then the only thing that makes that soreness goes away is a box of donuts or something, right? And so...
chocolate covered.
I don't care any donuts are so good. So if for somebody listening here, you were scared, you felt it. It's easy to blow by that and say, and then I had this moment of peace, and then I exhaled, and then I turned around.
No, we didn't turn it around.
What does that fear, like you remember those days going out and that anger you have when somebody cuts your water off, but there's that indignation, and I'm going to break the rules, but I got to water, my family needs water, right? Like walk somebody through the heart racing, right?
Well, and it's just because you're at the bottom doesn't mean the transformation's over.
No. I saw the other day, this man has hit rock bottom and he appears to be digging, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, it was 1988 September when we filed bankruptcy. We started the radio show in 1992, June. So that's almost 4 years later.
Right.
wrote Financial Peace, 3 years later. So something happened during those other 3 years. How are we surviving?
That's the part
what's happening, and that's the that's the period between the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's the Maccabees,
Yeah.
Right? So it's the quiet time, the silent period, or whatever you call it. But there's a healing, a cocooning, a growing, picking the scabs off, and all of that process. That's Sharon and I. When we hit our 10, when all that stuff was happening, we had been married we got married in 82. So in 88, we've been married 6 years when we hit bottom. So at the 10-year mark, we almost divorced.
Right.
4 years after it all happened. Why? Because we were too concentrated on freaking existing.
Right.
To even worry about having a feeling. Or being wronged or having any rights or anything else. But once we healed up enough, we got enough money, then we went, I don't like you.
Yeah.
It's like, and she's like, by the way, back then you pissed me off. And I'm like, that's 4 years ago. Get over it, you know? But no, and so we end up in marriage counseling for 4 years trying to survive and learn how to be married now again. Or for the first time in a new way with a new set of rules and circumstances. So that all is going on during that quiet period, so to speak, and really bleeds over into the early days of when I started this show, and not this show, but the Dave Ramsey show back in the day, or the Money Game it was called back then.
So how does an East Tennessee guy who's got, you have to have some swagger to become a 26-year-old real estate mogul, and then falls off, and then is immediately into hustling again? I got to feed this family.
Yeah, I don't have a choice.
How in the world does that guy summon the humility to go to a therapist? Therapist was not a thing back then. That was
no, it wasn't. No,
there wasn't a marriage therapist on every corner like there is now.
No, but basically we're going. I looked at it like going to class.
Okay.
Like
I learned some new tools.
Like I don't know how to do this, so I need somebody to teach me how to do this.
Yeah, but that's a special level of humility, Dave.
Well, I didn't know how to do it. I mean, it was not.
I guess there was
not like I think I know how, but I'm going to be humble. No, it wasn't. It was like I don't know what the crap I'm doing here. I mean, I didn't know how to be married, and I certainly didn't know how to be married from a Christian perspective. And so I'm studying scriptures, and we're going to Christian marriage retreats and Christian marriage weekends and seminars and this stuff. And so I'm learning the scriptural concepts of this, and I'm starting to learn how to apply them, and and I'm dying and being reborn,
right?
Literally, in so many facets of my life, but certainly spiritually, in that process. And so it really wasn't. It was more like, and it wasn't really like this desperate thing, but it was, I don't know how to fix this, and and the manual I've got is confusing. So I need somebody to guide me through the manual. And it was just, for me, it was like a practical thing, if that makes any sense. But and I didn't go to fix her. I'll give myself a little credit.
Yeah.
I didn't go, I'm taking you to marriage counseling to straighten you out, because I was well aware that the majority of it was me. And I also knew enough about trauma. I wouldn't have called it that in those days, but I'd studied enough psych in school and that kind of stuff to get the idea that we'd been through hell and it affected both of us.
Right.
And so we were damaged goods two damaged people. I mean, my insecurity was magnified off the roof because I'd lost all confidence and competence, as if I had any. And her insecurity turned into just sheer terror. Yeah. She's afraid every move I was going to make was going to put us in the street.
Yeah.
And rightly so, it had. Mm-hmm. So we had to work through some.
Did you have a family map for that? Or were you out in the woods on this one?
No, we were out in the woods. I mean, we had church family.
But I mean, you didn't have like a mom or dad that went through stuff, and you saw them treat each other this way, or aunts and cousins. My parents are, her parents and my parents stayed married their whole lives. Okay.
They were, but that's all we knew. We didn't know how they did it.
Right. Yeah.
And we knew it was messy.
Of
you know,
course.
how you do it, because it is always messy.
Right.
And if you think it's not messy, you're lying. You know?
That's right.
So, you know, or you haven't been married long, or whatever. I had a lady come up and said, "I'd never had a fight with my husband in 35 years." And I said, "That's because you're a liar."
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, the book lines.
He does
people
drugs.
Say, yeah, people stuff saying book lines, right? But yeah, so that's all in that pretext. And really that hasn't changed because, like, you know, I start running a business and I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. So I got to get, you know, John Maxwell in my corner. I got to get Henry Cloud in my corner. I got to get, and I didn't even know these men. I started reading their stuff. They become friends later, but they, yeah, I had to have a guide to lead me through the forest on these different things that I didn't know. And I'm still looking. I don't look for a singular mentor. I don't believe in that. I need someone to be my mentor thing. I don't do that stuff. But I do look at a guy and go, he's got a good marriage. Okay, dude, what are you doing? Or that guy's good. Look at his kids turned out. How'd you do that? You know, because I'm ready to kill mine. So,
but
how do you let them live and they turn out? You know,
it does sound so A plus B equals C. Like, I need to learn how to fix this vacuum. That guy knows how. I'm going to call that guy. That's an increase. It's always been rare, and it's an increasingly rarer thing. Because now we got these little boxes in our phones that tell us that we know everything. We can just Google it, right?
Well, yeah, but
there's not a lot of people that do that.
It is a type of humility, but it's not this. But what happened was I have the benefit of being humiliated by being this crushing experience going through, losing everything. And so there was nothing left that said Dave knew anything.
Right.
And so it was really easy to go, I don't know how to do that because obviously I don't know how to do anything, you know, kind of thing. So, you know, and so starting from that point, but that kid that was arrogant little, 25-year-old, 24-year-old, whatever, would not have gone to counseling because he would not have been wrong about anything.
Okay. So when I've made stupid mistakes, said stupid things, we had a joint conference, a Zoom conference with my kids, with Hank's school today. And after the meeting, I told Sheila, hey, I want to join that Zoom. And she just looked at me with that one pause. And I said, I won't embarrass us. And so we had the Zoom meeting. And then I texted her after, did I embarrass us? And she wrote, no. And that nope. And I was like, okay, good.
You can go home tonight.
I'm good. Yes, I can sleep inside. So when we do dumb things or stupid things, I wear my shame, right? I have to deal with me. I've got to, and my tendency is like you. I need to surround myself by people who know how to do things I don't know how to do. And that's one of my favorite things about being alive. But my wife, I've learned over the years, wears it too in a different way. To the best of you understand, how is Sharon walking through this? As someone who'd hitched her wagon to a smooth talking, multimillionaire,
then wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, her first thing she would tell you was that she was terrified, that the experience terrified her. And so we had to put, marriage counseling did this and common sense did this too. We had to put rules in our life that keep me from doing something without her agreement that's going to terrify her. And so, for instance, we don't spend over $500, either one of us, without first talking about it.
To this day.
We do live on a budget, yeah. I'm worth hundreds of millions of dollars,
right.
And I don't spend over $500 without talking to my wife. I never go and just buy something. Now, these days, with the zeros we live with, we are less and less concerned about it. You know, if she wants to buy a purse that costs more than it should, I'm just no big deal because that means I get another gun. But yeah, so a little trade-off here. But but it's not. So it's not like But in the old days, it was like, here we go again. It was like, you're scamming and scheming again. That's what she would say. And so I don't know if that gives you insight into her mindset or not. I don't think you would have to ask her to be sure, but I didn't read her as shame. That was me, but she didn't cause it. She just was hitched to it.
Yeah.
Now she was like at a family reunion with her family, the fact that we were bankrupt. Now that she might have felt shame with that, but even with our friends and stuff, she's like, well, he's just an idiot. I mean, maybe not exactly that, not that raw, but I mean, she's just like,
She'll call it. She calls it like it is.
She didn't feel like she caused it because she didn't.
Okay.
And so, but except to the extent that she didn't speak up. Mm-hmm. And years later, she found her voice, and it works real well now. But she didn't speak up. She was just kind of the Southern Belle, whatever you want to do, honey. Mm-hmm. And then later on, she go, but I knew it wasn't going to work. And I'm like, well, why didn't you say anything? You're dadgum genius till after the fact. Mm-hmm. But so we just don't do stuff, but what we're both in agreement. Mm-hmm. And we don't make large philanthropic gifts. We do a lot of giving to ministry through our family foundation. It's all structured. The family all speaks into it. Our kids speak into it. Sharon and I are in agreement. And if one of my buddies calls up that's got a ministry and goes, hey, I need $10,000 for this, even if I know there's room in the budget, I email Sharon and Denise. My daughter's the director of the foundation. I'm going, so-and-so's wanting $10,000. I think we've got it in the budget. I think we ought to do it. What do y'all think? Mm-hmm. Now, I easily can make that decision. I make hundreds of thousands of dollars decisions around the company every day without talking to them. I run it through the leadership team here. But the accountability back to that keeps me from walking up on thin ice that activates her old scars, her old wounds. And
would you, for both of you, are they still there somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll be the rest of our lives. Less and less, the more and more padding you had over them, and the more distance you have, the more healed they are. If you'd ask us 2 years later or 5 years later, it felt a lot different for both of us. I've worked past that shame and worked past that the insecurity and the humiliation that I put myself through by owning it, but also by not doing it anymore, and I'm not that guy anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I'm not arrived. Don't get me wrong. I'm a better leader than I was when I started, and so that allows me to give myself grace.
Yeah. So that leads me to an identity question, twofold. One is my default setting, if you will, is when things get bananas in other people's life, I head in. Like, that's just how I'm wired. I'm going to head on in. Mm-hmm. When things get bananas in my life, my default setting is to just fade out, just to withdraw. Yours feels like it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I go straight in.
You go, like, I'm going to go swinging. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from? I know where mine comes from. Like, where does that tendency to, oh boy, here we go.
I don't know. Could be upbringing. It could be family DNA, or is it nurture or nature? How do you? I don't know.
How do you?
I grew up in a neighborhood that if where two little boys would get in a fight. Mm-hmm. I don't do that now.
Right.
Okay, but I mean,
that's mine too. You settle it.
Two 12-year-old boys, you come on black eye or bloody nose or something. Your lip swelled up.
And your parents' first question is, well, did you win or what'd you say?
Yeah. Or who was it, and whose dad do I need to call to make sure we're all good? But it's not like, and the parents are all laughing about it. But today it would be like a dadgum Facebook drama or something, right? Or the HOA would be called in or something, or some kind of helicopter parenting. But we just bust George's lip if George mouthed off. And so when there's something coming at you, you reach and you fight. Mm-hmm. In other words, so there's probably some of that in there, and I still do some of that. Obviously, I don't bust people in the mouth anymore, except in my fantasies. But
that's another show.
But I don't. I haven't hit anybody in 40 years, so life's pretty good. But
so how do you? I have to, when I feel myself heading back, I've got a whole routine now that says real quick, and I can do it in real time. Nope. The most responsible, ethical, right, faith honoring thing is to go in this time.
Yeah.
How do you
not go in?
Go in.
Yeah. You
have a process, or do you have is that just routine over years, or discipline, or people in your life? What is it?
Again, I've because there's a lot of fight or flight kind of psychology in this, and physiological things in there as well. And so I had to study and go, okay, from my background, from my natural wiring or my wiring, if I'm going to reach over and jump into the fight, I need to stop and think about, is it a fight? or did I just decide it was? I mean, is this? And so it's early in my adult life, I had a tremendous temper and anger. And it was a big part of my spiritual transformation by the time I was 30 that it was gone. And I'm really passionate, loud, and gregarious. And sometimes people who are a little more laid back and receive me as anger, but it's not anger.
Gotcha.
I very seldom get really, really, really like out of control rage type anger. Like pulse rate goes up, eyes dilate, hands sweat,
Like we're on it now.
Yeah, it's game on. I almost never, because it was such a spiritual exercise for me early in my faith walk to get that under control. Because the wrathful man in Proverbs doesn't have much good happen for him.
Nope.
And he had to be, I had to die to him, and he had to grow up. And so I very seldom lose my, I mean, in 30 years of running this company, I have completely lost it with a team member 2 times. 2 times.
Yeah.
And they were not good, and I can recount them, and it's like going on a bender or something. You go, I ain't ever drinking that again. And so it was not a fun trip for me or them.
That's fascinating, because I can remember 2 or 3 times, 4 or 5 times over the last several years when I kept my mouth shut, and I shouldn't have, and I leaned back. And I should have, you know what I mean? And so it haunts me in that same way, right?
Yeah, just opposite way.
Reverse,
action or inaction, either one. But it's and so it just becomes part of your spiritual walk, your psychological growth pattern to go, okay, I'm going to grow up, because children act like that.
Yeah.
Children shrink back when they should step in, or children reach over and bloody somebody's nose.
Right.
And that's a childish reaction. That is not an adult reaction. That's someone who has no self-control, and self-control is a fruit of the Spirit.
That's right.
For those of us that are Christians.
So the second part of that identity is this. I do, almost every caller to the show, almost everybody I've met with over the years, they carry the worst thing that's ever happened to them, the worst thing they've ever done, the worst thing someone's ever said to them. It weaves its way into their DNA. It becomes them. And it informs how they talk, how they think about themselves, how they treat other people, etc. You've had to walk it seems like you've had to walk a really thin line between taking this worst thing that happened, and which is bankruptcy, the humility, rising up from that, but you've built a company on it. And you continue to tell that story, yet it does not define you. Give some wisdom on how you've made that transition, because that to me is one of the biggest challenges.
I don't know how I did it, but now I take the same calls in the sense that I hear the same thing.
Somebody cheats on their wife 10 years ago, and they can't get over it.
The question is, have you grieved it, and have you healed from it? And if you haven't, it is still your identity.
Okay.
I don't know how I did that, but something allowed me through this process. And again, it was a spiritual transformational time in my life as well. It was very rich. And I'm getting over having a temper. I'm trying to learn how to be married. I've got young babies, and I don't know how to raise them. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to act. And I'm having to learn how to do all of these things as a man. And so in the midst of that, somehow I gave myself some grief because I did some stupid butt stuff, and we went broke. It's my fault. And so I had to own it, and then I had to grieve it, and then I had to heal from it. And if you don't heal from it, it becomes your identity. And so I have people call the show, and they're like, well, the reason I've got these financial problems is I went through a divorce, and I've got $50,000 in debt. And I'm like, and the divorce was just awful, and it just destroyed my life. And I'm like, so how long ago was it? 11 years. I'm like, 11 years? The language they were using was 11 months.
Right.
Because it's still fresh. They still bathe in that acid every day. They have not moved past it. They're stuck in it. Well, back then, my husband did so-and-so. They're still stuck in that. And so you got to cut the bad thing that happened to you, whether you brought it on yourself or not, loose. and heal from it and grieve it. And I probably wouldn't have used the word grieving 6 months ago, but you've taught me a lot about that. Just listening to you take a call on my show, our show, the Ramsey show, and say, well, have you grieved that? And I'm like, well, I mean, it's okay to grieve a loss, even if it's a weird loss,
Or if it's a teeny tiny one, or if it's a great big one, right?
Yeah, it's okay to just stop and recognize that actually did hurt,
Instead of just keep running on that same hurt ankle, right?
It's like, well, I had a really, really nice car and I totaled it. And, well, you can't talk about a car that nice, and you're sad about it because that makes you a jerk, right?
And so one of the most common things, I think, I've talked about this, I've worked with, doctors and lawyers behind closed doors, and you're allowed to be sad that you wrecked your Lexus.
Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah.
Right? You're allowed to be sad that your lake
totaled
house
my
got totaled.
Maserati, okay? I'll own it.
You're allowed to be sad.
And it hurt my feelings because I liked that car.
Yep.
But you can't tell people my Maserati because it makes you sound like you're untouchable and you're too cool or you're snobbish or something. Which it's none of that. I just wrecked my really nice car and it hurts my feelings.
Well, and we live in this culture of comparative grief, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I've got it worse than you.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to grieve something like that.
No, there's a cap, right? If it's like we've talked about,
because well, cry me a river 1%er. It's like
and I remember, Dave, I was doing my dissertation. I remember calling my dissertation chair saying, I'm going to have to talk about something really controversial in the defense. And he said, well, what is it? And I said, really powerful, wealthy people get to be sad too. And they get to have good marriages too and be sad when their marriages aren't working. And in fact, if they can be well and whole, everybody's well and whole because they run it was this like, whoa, you know what I mean? And he was like, whew, okay. You know what I mean? It was this whole,
oh yeah,
wait a minute, man.
Yeah.
If we're going to, if we're going to be about helping people be well, but it goes back to, man, I keep thinking this word over and over, Dave. You have this supernatural capacity to forgive yourself. And I think many people aren't able to do that. To forgive yourself, to forgive the circumstance, to forgive it, and then go about being what tomorrow's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's a gift,
and
or it's a practice.
And I think people often ask me about a lot of different things, and I will go back to going broke. I have the inordinate benefit of having gone broke early in my life. And I think it gives you that.
Yeah.
If that had happened a different way at a different time in my life, I might not have that.
It reminds me of an old kickboxing coach that would put you against somebody way ahead of you and say, when you know the worst that can happen, then you're free to actually get in there and spar and start throwing punches and kicks.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stories that relate that, but it's but I there's what is this show? Ted Lasso.
Oh, what a masterpiece.
Be a goldfish.
Yes.
Be a goldfish, right?
Yes, yeah.
What's the animal with the shortest memory? A goldfish. Be a goldfish.
So we can get into this one. This is a fun question here. So a common question that I get asked either on the Instagrams or through the emails is, Delony, you and Dave are different. Right?
Yeah.
And so
he's a lot smarter than I am.
Yeah, right. And so one of the things, like one of the my loop arounds is always, man, I have intentionally, just as a life practice, surrounded myself with people with different beliefs in me, but who have the same values as I do.
Yeah.
And those are two different things. One of the things I love about working with you is you've got I wrote this question before I knew about your desire to learn stuff. You seem to crave other people's insights into things. Whether you incorporate it or not is a whole other conversation, but you like to know, hey, how did you do that? Tell me about this. Like, why are you thinking that way?
If you think I'm wrong, argue with me.
Yeah.
I relish that.
That is for someone who's achieved your success, that is a freakishly rare thing. What drives that?
I don't want to make mistakes anymore. I don't want to mess that up. I don't want to mess this up. I want to know how this works. And
you said something.
I'm the guy that I was the kid that took the radio, or my dad had a junk lawnmower and I took every bolt out of it and took the engine apart to learn how the engine worked. I had to know. And I don't know why that was. And the next door neighbor was mean. And he's like, you want to learn how a spark plug works?
Oh, man.
And he said, here, hold this. And he pulled the lawnmower through and knocked me, I fell backward, knocked me back. That's a hard shock right there. It's worse than a light socket. But but I'll never touch a spark plug wire again.
Nope.
And I was 10.
You'll never listen to a neighbor either.
Yeah, I never listen to that guy again about anything. Here, pull my finger. Right. But
it seems like
the idea that I have to know how it works, and this Enneagram stuff everybody's studying. I am the quintessential 8, and 8 is a challenger, and I get intimacy by arguing. I enjoy that, and so Rachel and I just for sport argue. We're the worst, the two of us. We do it on the air, and we do it at the Easter table last Sunday. And so the rest of them are all just watching. And it's just like, would you shoot? You're just, and you're just a conspiracy theory girl, and come on. So it's just, her and her conspiracy theories. But I get intimacy from that. It doesn't. I don't.
It's a rare thing.
I'm not mad. I'm just inquisitive.
Yeah.
But sometimes people take that conflict process that I use to get information as anger and like we're going to lose relationship or something over it. No, I don't lose relationship. That actually increases it.
Gotcha. I wish you could. So one of the great relational turns I always want couples to make is going from judgment to curiosity. When he said that thing, before you bite his head off, stop and don't judge it and say, hey, tell me what you meant by that. Or vice versa, right? You responded to that text from that woman before I go off the handle, tell me about it, right? Or, okay, I want to have this kind of date. Before you freak out and call your friend, like that, if you could write that book, Dave, I'm telling you, man, people cannot. It's a rare thing to enter into, especially when you quote unquote have made it, right? To say, tell me about that, instead of just impose will. And that's a thing that I love working with you.
I had Art Linkletter on the air. He was here in person before he passed away. Inordinately successful in like 3 different fields. People knew him from, he was a contemporary of Walt Disney. Walt Disney was one of his personal friends. And he's telling stories on the air, and I was just enamored. And he was 88 years old when he was here. And he did 78 speaking engagements that year. I'm like, why? Why? He goes, well, when you stop learning and growing, you are dead. Whether you do that at 40 or whether you do that at 140. But he said you might as well stay engaged because there's all kinds of aging data on the brain that says that it is a muscle and it atrophies when you don't use it. And he said, I'm doing 78 speaking engagements and I'm writing another book this year. And he's 88 years old. And he didn't need to financially. He didn't need to from a notoriety standpoint. He was an icon at that point. But it was just to stay engaged and just to continue to grow, because if you're not growing, you're dying.
So there's that. Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest things one of the greatest gifts you can bestow upon yourself and those around you is that constant, tell me how that works. Let's take that apart.
Yeah. How's that lawnmower work?
How does that work?
How's that lawnmower work? Here, hold the spark plug.
So, what makes you a good dad? I know it's a different question. You got grown kids versus little kids. I got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. What
makes a good dad or made me one?
You, yeah.
Well, I was not a great dad. I was a good dad. And I got substantially better in time, just in time, before the formative years were completely gone and before teenagers needed to be executed. And so we laughingly say our kids turned out because of the nurturing of their mother and the fear of their father. But that, obviously they were not afraid all the time, quaking in their boots from me. But we had, Sharon and I both gave them very firm boundaries.
Okay.
We did not want to be disciplinarians to the point that you create Stepford children. My friend Andy Andrews says you want to raise children who become good adults. You don't want to raise good kids.
So you're playing a long game.
And so that, and that affects how If you let them, oh yeah, step over there. You don't do it. I'm gonna let you. And there, see, there it hurt, didn't it? Grab a spark plug wire, right? And so you learn those lessons permanently when you do that. But you give them enough rope to find it, but not so much rope that they can be permanently damaged and harmed. And but they had real firm boundaries. Our kids, but they weren't. There's always the kids, and I guess there's a spectrum in the neighborhood. We had you have the hippie parents, I call them, and the kids just run wild.
Right.
It's anarchy. Like the two little boys on, what's the wonderful NASCAR thing with Will?
Ricky Bobby.
Ricky. Yeah, those two boys, those two kids. That's the anarchy kids, right? Anarchy. And so until Grandma comes in and puts them and sets them straight. That's kind of how I grew up. So, but the parents that don't believe in giving their children any boundaries, and so they raise animals, not humans, not adults. And then there's the parents who put so many boundaries and they make all their decisions for them that the children develop no critical thinking skills. And they can't make a moral decision in the moment. They can't make a physical harm decision in the moment because they've never made any decisions ever.
And that's the
I call them Stefford children.
Oh, I'm thinking of the graduate student parents who would call and ask for homework assignments, and it's like, your kid's 25. Like, what are you doing?
Well, we have them call here when their 28-year-old is interviewing, and they want to talk to HR, and we're like, well, I think we settled that. We're pretty much not hiring this one.
Whoa.
Helicopter mother. Oh my God, woman. And so, there's that. They do everything for them. One of my friends is a counselor, called them lawnmower parents. They not only helicopter for them, but they mow out they got a clear path so they can walk right straight through. And they don't have any muscle structure or any bone structure in their character to make a decision with. But they also weren't allowed to just run loose. And so there were consequences and moral things as believers, as Christians, that we demanded.
Right.
You're not going to do this.
Right.
And they were physically afraid of violating those boundaries.
Yeah. So what would you go back and do different?
I would have been more affirming. I don't mind being tough, but I would have been more affirming.
What does that mean?
I just would have spent more time, more hugs. I did plenty of hugs. I was there. I was emotionally present, those kinds of things. But I would have been warmer in general. And just by that, I mean bragged on them more directly. I did that later as I found it. But, I mean, it would have been like one of our granddaughter's birthday, one of Rachel's daughter's birthday. And we did the happy birthday on Easter. And the whole table, there's 14 of us sitting there, 6 kids and 8 adults and everything. And I'm just looking at little Amelia and just speaking into her, how wonderful she is and how proud Papa Dave is of her and how smart she is and how pretty she is. And you're going to be a big deal, kid. You're amazing. And just that little 30-second thing, that kid lit up like a bulb, man. And her daddy does that all the time, and her mama does that all the time. Papa Dave did it too, though, this time. And so, bragging on myself. But I wished I'd done more of that when mine was that age.
Well, so here's how we'll redeem that. Today I had a conference, like I said, with my kids' school, and I got off that conference, and I just thought, man, what a great little 10, 11-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And here's what I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have gone home and told him that. And I'm going to go home and tell him that I got to peek behind his curtain. Yep.
Hands on
his face.
Touch his face.
Look his eyes. Yeah.
And by the way, he is a great kid.
Oh, he's awesome. He can shoot a shotgun too. So.
Yes, he can. We were out shooting clays. That little turkey's popping them, man. I mean, he don't miss.
Yeah,
he's a better shot than his daddy.
That's a low bar, man. But all right. So here's the last thing. When I was deciding whether to work here, and I don't even know if you remember this, I had worked with. Not in the media world, but I'd worked behind closed doors with folks who they call me in and say, hey, Delony, I'm president of such and such. I'm this and this. I think I've done the thing that's going to get me in trouble or get me fired, and I need some talk through this with me. One of the most common things that became I just started beating this drum years ago, and it was, you got to have people. The more successful you are, the lonelier you get. And so I don't even know if you remember this. One of the questions I asked you in our interview was, who do you listen to? Who do you hang out with? And you rattled off 3 or 4 different groups. And I left, and I remember calling Sheila on the way home, my wife, on the way home, and said, Dave and I are going to disagree about stuff, and I don't even fully know what this job is, but I trust him. But I trust him, and because he's got people speaking to him. It's been my experience that there's a shift that happens when you become successful. So you get your medical degree and you become a doctor, and you have your same buddies from med school, and you have your wife's friends or your husband's friends, and y'all hang out. And then suddenly you buy the practice, and then you and 2 partners buy the other practice. And then pretty soon your house gets a little bit bigger, and your car gets nicer, and then people start going to your house because it's your house, not because they're going to hang out with you. And they start waiting for your fill in the blank, your party. You have the coolest Halloween stuff or whatever. And then slowly those intimate little, hey, bring whatever casserole you got, whatever half bottle of wine you got, and come over to my house. Those start going away because they just turn into shows, productions. Have you experienced in your arc a tightening of that circle or a loneliness? Or you seem to really cultivate people around you?
I've experienced it. It has the opportunity to do that, and the reason it does that is not because you seek isolation or something, but everyone goes through an evolution of friends.
Yeah.
If you're only friends when you're 50 are your high school buddies,
that's a problem.
You're Uncle Rico on Napoleon Dynamite, okay? I mean, so that's just, you should have outgrown some of those people.
And here's this. I remember,
or they should have outgrown you, or we should have had value-based, disagreements that don't allow us to have real close, intimate conversations anymore.
And this is an important thing to
like I had buddies that they're doing cocaine still, and I'm 60.
Yes.
So they're not my buddies now.
Right.
I mean, I'm not mad at them. I'm not mean to them. I don't shame them. But I don't need them hanging out at my house.
Right. I remember a buddy of mine became a college president, and suddenly I didn't go to the fights anymore. He didn't have us over.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, that's the rightest, smartest thing for this guy to do. Because Delony's a hothead, and especially 15 years ago, I'm going to say something stupid about when I was over it. So there was a natural evolution on behalf of this.
Well, I wasn't.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm not guarding this place or guarding our lives. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you're going to have a few people that make it all the way through your life with you, and then you're going to develop new friends as you grow and change that you have intimacy with, in terms of an intimate conversation. I mean, not sexual intimacy.
Right. No, I know what you mean.
And so Sharon and I are going to dinner tonight with a couple that we have hung out with for 35 years.
So they're on the inside of the inside.
They knew Dave Ramsey before there was a Dave Ramsey. Right. They were there when I was going broke, and so. And we're still good friends, but the guy reads like a maniac. I mean, he's not uber business successful, but very successful. And so I don't go to him for business insights because our scale is different. Right. But that's a guy from way back. But then I'm perfectly content with Henry Cloud is a really good personal friend, and that's happened in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
And not 35-year relationships, an 8-year relationship. But Henry and I email once a week about something, trading some stupid joke or whatever. And anytime I'm in L.A., we're hanging out, or he's over here, we're hanging out. And he does events with us, and we hang out with him. And
what's your trust metric? When is it a gradual thing, or do you?
Oh, definitely.
You go okay,
definitely. And I'm looking for authenticity.
I struggle with that.
Authenticity.
I struggle with
because I can smell a fake a mile away. I'm not real discerning on some things. It's easy to lie to me. I've been lied to a lot, and people get away with it.
They want to impress you, right?
Or period. Just not just me, but I mean just in general. My ability to detect that's horrible, but my ability to detect a fake, I can walk in the room and just go, yeah, because I was one. You're just acting like, just if we could buy you for what you're worth and sell you for what you think you're worth, son, you'd be something. We'd make some money on you. But no, they're not. He's not a real dude, or she's not a real dude. I can smell those putting on the dog and the plastic stuff and God, man, just be real. Yeah. Just go. I'm just some days suck, some days don't. We're just, let's have some meatloaf, put a little ketchup on it, and white beans and cornbread, and and we'll just sit down here and talk together and hang out. We may laugh about stupid stuff. We may tell 13-year-old boy jokes. We may whatever. But let's just, for God's sakes, be real.
Yeah. How do you? I feel like in my life the temptation is to always go home and just shut the door. Do you get energy from being alone, or do you get energy from other people?
Oh, I'm an extrovert. I get energy from other people. Okay. Sharon gets energy from being alone, so it keeps us balanced. So I don't overdo that, and I don't like the social setting, the classic party where you stand around, the drink in your hand. What do you do? And I don't give a crap, and all that stuff. That drives me bananas. But to sit down and hang, with people that I love, and the thing back to your other question a minute ago, I want to add to it right quick, because I think it's a principle other people can use, and I would suggest it. As you grow, don't be afraid to ask people that are slightly or even much more successful than you at a given thing into your life if they're authentic, if they're real.
Right.
Because you'd be amazed at that all these successful people are really, all success is a pile of all the mistakes you've made, and you're standing on it rather than laying under it.
Gotcha.
So they have all climbed a mountain of garbage too. And that they have all shoveled, the more new levels, new devils, right? That they have shoveled manure at levels that you hadn't shoveled it maybe, and they have hurt at levels you haven't hurt. They've been betrayed and lied about it maybe at levels you haven't yet. And don't be afraid to hang out with them if they'll be real.
Yeah. Now,
I know people in show business or radio or leadership training or whatever that aren't. They're fakey. But I'm amazed at somebody like at a Henry Cloud level who's sold 10 million books, that a guy like that, or I can name other names. I'll start dropping names. I'm not going to do that. But these guys that are uber successful, they need and want friendship too.
Yes.
That's my thing. And so if you just ask, like the first time I did that was 20 years ago, I formed an Eagles group, we called it. And I made a list of men that I knew well and men that I just knew who they were. And I knew they had a good marriage. I knew they were walking with God at some level. And I knew that they had some level of success in their field. They were music people. They were pastors of good-sized organizations. They were authors. They were business people of some kind. And I emailed 12 guys, and some of them were like studs. I mean, Eagles, and I was like, wow, the fact that I could get their email was kind of like intimidating. And I asked 12 of them to get together once a week and study the Bible or read a book and just talk and be guys together, and just create a group of guys just to love each other and encourage each other and be accountable to over time as we built relationship. Just a short email like that. You know how many of them came the first meeting? All of them.
Wow. And
these are household names. If I started naming them off, people today, people would know who I was talking about. About 9 out of the 12 are household names. And one of the guys I'm having dinner with tonight, so he's still that group lasted 12 years. But my point is that don't be afraid to invite people into your life that are new, that have the stuff, because they need it too.
And I not only they need it, most of my experience has been they desperately want it.
Yeah, they yearn for it.
Yeah, and many of us go back to middle school. I don't care how successful we are. I didn't get invited to that, so I'm gonna head home.
Yeah.
And I'm good. I'm cool.
Yeah.
And the cars get nicer. And the dinners get nicer, but you're still by yourself, right?
Yeah.
And man, I would love to be included into a thing. We all want to be included in a thing. Yeah. But again, it goes back, Dave. I talked to a single mom. I talked to a dad who just wants to be a better husband. I talked to fill in the blank. And the expectation is these things just happen. And what you just described was a highly intentional, I need this. I am valued enough that I need other people. and I'm going to do the work and get these guys' email addresses. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to go first.
Yeah.
It goes back to that.
Well, and I knew that as we grew that I would go back to your earlier question, that I would go into isolation because I'd be too cool for school potentially, and that's where people crash.
That's it.
That's when leaders die.
Right.
This is where leaders go to die. Isolation and arrogance and secret lives off to the side, and think that nobody sees this stuff. Well, God sees it. And you're not getting away from it.
Yeah.
And so I knew I have the benefit of a wife who is not impressed at all with Dave Ramsey.
I have that same blessing.
And so that's a good starting point for accountability. And then I had that group of guys, and when that group broke up, I formed another group with a little different mindset and a little different thing, but still with the same idea of deep relationships with men who will call you out.
Right.
And so when Ramsey's getting hammered in the press, you know who's emailed me? Those 11 guys.
Okay.
6 of them will carry my casket.
Yeah. And that, man, that's a great one to leave on here, but going all the way back to every single person I've ever met has crashed. Maybe not as spectacularly as you did. Everybody crashes. Everybody messes up.
Well, moral crash is more what I was concerned about, or integrity crash. Or
no, I'm saying all the way
arrogance.
back to your bankruptcy, right?
Yeah.
We all are growing, and I don't care how small you think your situation is or how quote-unquote big it is. You're in a big building with your name on it. It goes back to that intentionality. I'm going to surround myself with people who know stuff I don't know because I want to learn. I'm going to surround myself with people who are going to teach me how to be a better husband, better dad, better business leader, better whatever. I'm going to surround myself with. I'm going to go first and practice friends. And that sounds so dumb, right? Because when you're a kid, they just shove you. My kids will play with any rando. Our kids hung out with Rachel's kids the other day. It took 8 minutes, and then they're off telling stories, and I don't know what they're doing up there, right?
Yeah.
It's weirder with us, right? With grown-ups. We have too many shells and layers and whatnot. It's going first and saying, I deserve to have friends.
Well, they're so desperate to be impressive that you're not.
That you impress nobody because you're alone, right?
Exactly. Well, but you're not impressive because you're fake.
Yes.
So you're putting up all this stuff instead of just going, hey, there's some good here and there's some bad. Get ready, man.
I'm bringing the casserole. That's
Get ready.
exactly
That's
right.
it.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's beautiful. Well, brother, thanks for your time. It's super valuable.
Honored to have you. And listen, I'm so proud of what you're doing here.
Thanks, man.
It's absolutely amazing. I listen to the podcast on my runs and my walks in the morning, and you're taking some weird calls, and you're taking some good calls, and you're helping a lot of people. And I'm so proud of the Dr. John Delony show and Dr. John Delony and the help you're giving people, and I'm proud it's part of our team here.
Well, I'm grateful for you, man. And for the listeners, there was a moment when I said that exact thing, Dave. I don't know what this job is, and you're asking me to. I'm going to leave something that I've worked for 15, 20 years to do. I've never done this, and you said, trust me.
Oh, I knew you could do this.
And, man, I'm so grateful that I did.
I knew this was going to be big, and it's just begun.
Man, it's
going to be mammoth.
It's a silly little thing we're doing here. It's wild, man.
Get ready, baby. Hold on.
Well, I'm grateful for you. Appreciate you.
It's a bull ride, baby. Hold on.
I know. My father-in-law rode bulls, man. He's been telling me that for years. All right. Appreciate you, man. Have a good night.
You too, brother.
Take care. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to my interview with my friend and boss, Dave Ramsey. Listen, I said at the beginning of the show we were not going to have song lyrics of the day. I asked Dave what his favorite songs were, and he was like Eagles and some older songs. Listen, here's his favorite song. It doesn't even have lyrics. It's that Baker Street saxophone song that goes at the beginning. It starts at the beginning of every single Dave Ramsey show, every single Ramsey show. So instead of lyrics of the day, I'm just gonna bring it from my heart. That's more trumpety than saxophony, I think. Is that that's right?
You sound like the monkey in the Jungle Book doing a trumpet solo.
Rude. I'm rocking the Baker Street saxophone.
Not a saxophone.
It is a saxophone. It's a woodwind.
No,
it'll work.
It is in the song, but that what you just said was not a saxophone.
I don't even think a trumpet's a woodwind. Stay in school, don't do drugs. This has been the Dr. John Delony Show.